On this episode of Clear the Air,
and I just walked out of the hotel, took a left, went down the beach, took another left, and was walking down the street, and I saw some restaurant, and I'm like, I'm going to go eat here. And I went up to the second floor, and you're just sitting out there looking at the town on one side and the beach on the other side. But the food was just phenomenal.
Wow, that's way more romantic than the best dish I've ever had. The best dish I've ever had was at the buffet at Caesar's Palace.
When you go to Finland, take lots of ice with you.
That's Europe in general.
I know, but more so in Finland, which I found to be truly ironic. Went over to Thailand, did some scuba diving. My kids are dive certified.
Without wetsuits?
No wetsuits. In fact, they tried to give us wetsuits, and I was looking at them like, the water here is like 84 degrees. Why am I wearing a wetsuit? The whole point of this is it kind of just grosses you out and thinking how many other people are beating in suits. That's why I don't wear them.
Now I'm not wearing wetsuits anymore.
Welcome to Clear the Air podcast. I'm your host, Nate Jones, and this is our co-host today, Shad Slaughter.
Hey.
This is your first time here.
This is my first time here.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Shad.
Well, Nate, you and I have been working together for 10 years.
Oof, you make me sound old.
So,
but I think so.
Yeah. I don't even know what to say. What am I supposed to say about it? Is this about Clear?
About you.
About me?
We want to know why you're bald, why your kids laugh at you and call you bald.
Well, I used xylitol. I had hair before that. You can cut that part out.
Okay, let's start. We'll just... Okay, welcome to the Clear the Air podcast. I'm your host, Nate Jones, and I'm here with Shad Slaughter.
Hi there. All right, one more time.
Welcome to the Clear the Air podcast. I'm Nate Jones, and we're here today with Shad Slaughter.
Hello.
This is your first time here, isn't it, Shad?
This is my first time in this seat, yes.
Are you excited to be here?
Well, first time for everything.
Oh, well, okay. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself so that everybody knows who you are. I've already told them all about me.
Well, Nate, we've known each other for about 10 years now, working together. I came back a few months ago as the president of Clear. Outside of that, I just enjoy travel and exploring and being outside, river rafting, mountain biking, skiing. And I've got some young children and just exploring Utah and the U.S. with my kids.
Why do you stick it to the U.S.?
We have a no plane rule when our kids were younger. So, but there's a lot to see in the U.S. Now they're getting older. We're starting to take them on airplanes, though. So,
why are you afraid of putting your kids on airplanes?
It turns a vacation into a business trip. So,
okay. Well, now that summer's in full swing, tell us what your vacation plans are.
Well, we just got back from 3 days of rafting up in Jackson Hole. The river was flowing at 20,000, which is 5 times normal. So we got 3 runs on Friday and 3 runs on Saturday.
I guess I missed my invite?
I think you were in Thailand, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, oh, yeah. You're right. Okay. Yeah.
Whew,
as long as it was last weekend. I thought it was this week. Okay. Yeah. No, that's, I take my kids and on a trip every summer somewhere around the world. I do that, but we got to get your kids out of the country.
They've been down in the Bahamas. I think we've been up to Canada with them. We're headed to Finland next year with the kids. So
you can take the whole family over there?
Take the whole family over to Finland. It's hard to find vehicles for 6 people though, so might be 2 of us driving.
The last time I was in Finland, I'm actually going to Finland in August.
That's strange, so am I.
In fact, I just bought my ticket yesterday. There's actually a group of researchers that are doing research. They're getting together in Turku, which is where the studies and the research with xylitol started back in the late 1960s. And they're all getting together, and so I'm going to go over there and join them.
Well, ironically, my daughter is living in Turkey right now for the next 9 weeks.
Well,
so,
let me tell you about my last trip to Finland. Just because I'm going to give you a heads up. When you go to Finland, take lots of ice with you.
That's Europe in general.
I know, but more so in Finland, which I found to be truly ironic. The last time I was there, we were driving around, and I just kept trying to find ice. And we would go into every restaurant like, do you have ice? No. Okay, do you have ice? No. We'd go into the grocery store. Do you have ice? No. And they looked at me like I was an idiot for asking for ice. And it was the summer. I mean, granted, it was only like, a hot summer of 80 degrees or something. I mean, it is up there. I went swimming in a river north of the Arctic Circle, which was kind of chilly. I got in the water for about 5 minutes and then called it quits. I sat in a sauna and then jumped in the ocean, which was really cold. But we drove around nonstop, I want to say a week and a half, and every place we went, we couldn't find any ice. So just put in your suitcase a bunch of ice.
Put in my suitcase. I think ice is like a very U.S. thing. Pretty much everywhere I've traveled outside of the U.S., ice is not a normal thing that they put like in your water when you order at a restaurant or.
Well, here's a travel hack, and this is just something I tell you, because everywhere you go in the world, you go to the restaurants, you go out to eat, they ask for, do you want water, still or sparkling? And I always order still water, and then you just ask for ice. Lots of ice, because the ice is free.
Do they look at you funny?
Yeah, they do, but they get you ice. Now they get you ice. And the ice is free, and you just put the ice in there and let it melt, and then you drink that, and then you get...
Well, when I lived in the Philippines, the people in the neighborhood I lived in knew that the Americans had to drink boiled water, but they thought it meant boiling water. So on a 100-degree day, we would go over to some friend's house, and they would bring us a glass of boiling water. So my hack was just carry Ovaltine and make a little hot chocolate out of it on a 100-degree day.
Great. Oh, man. See, when I was 15, my parents took us to live in Mexico. We lived in Mexico City for a year. My mom wanted us all to learn to speak Spanish. And, I think we mentioned earlier that I have 13 siblings. And so we loaded up these cars. But, what they didn't have in Mexico back then was ice cream or ice. And we went out, and when we got there, they went out and they bought a refrigerator, but it took them forever to find one that actually had a freezer. And it was like, who needs a freezer? What do you need a freezer for? I mean, this is 85 in Mexico. And there was a number of times where my mom wanted ice cream, and she would have some people, I was younger back then, but some of the older kids and friends jump in the car from Mexico City and drive all day to Texas, buy some ice cream, pack it in a cooler with some ice and dry ice, and drive back to Mexico so we could have Mexico City so we could have ice cream.
That's some expensive ice cream.
They had driving around Mexico when we lived there, you'd go to these towns, and you could always go to these small towns while you're driving around, and you'd always go to this central square. They had these people walking around with just frozen fruit juice, and paletas is what they were called. And we used to go and get those because, again, our car didn't have air conditioning. And when you're driving around with 15 people in the car in a hot Mexican summer, it's kind of hot. Anyways, that's a little far off topic, but that's great.
That's all travel.
Yeah, no, it's great. I mean, when I was in Argentina, the best, this was great. I kept putting another one about temperature of what we drink. I would every morning I would put a Coke in the freezer, and with the expectation when I came home it would be cold. And I had this cleaning lady, and she would come over every day and take it out of the freezer because she kept yelling at me, saying she didn't want me to catch cold and die. And I finally got so mad at her. I'm like, stop her, I'm going to fire you. Stop taking it out. I want it slushy when I get home. Anyways, so tell me what's one of the trips on your bucket list?
So I've got 3 places that I really want to go. It's Iceland, New Zealand, and Japan. Those are 3 places I've not made it to. I've been to a lot of places, but for whatever reason. But this year, my wife and I, for our anniversary, we're spending 10 days in Iceland. Rented a 4-wheel drive
you can
van.
see all of Iceland in one day.
I don't think that's the case. I'm having a hard time making it, with all of the waterfalls and beaches and volcanoes and everything there.
Are you going to hang out at the beach and, get a tan?
No, definitely not a tan. You can't get a tan in a puffy jacket.
Yeah. Well, okay.
But we rented a 4-wheel drive van that we're going to sleep in. And I wanted to do the 4-wheel drive one because I had read that some of the best places in Iceland are on what they call their F roads. And you have to have vehicles that are rated to go on those roads. And there's one in particular where you actually get a drive through a river, and then 10 feet to the side is a waterfall. So you're driving on top of a waterfall. So
Ooh.
I'm excited about that. So
that might be something I need to take my kids and go do.
So we're headed there. But it looks like I might be flying through Reykjavik on the way to Finland, so I might get a little bit of a taste at the airport and then go back a few weeks later.
Oh. Have you bought your ticket?
No.
Then why would you do that?
Still looking.
Anyways, no, I've actually been to Iceland, and it was, I had a great time. I rented a car, and it was not a four-wheel drive. It was a little tiny car, but I did drive it to the top of whatever the volcano is where they start the story, the journey to the center of the earth, Jules Verne. I drove up to the top of that. I think I destroyed the car.
I think most of that is actually closed right now because of the current volcanic activity. So
I've been there.
Yeah.
I don't care. Let them close it down.
I know you're a diver. That was the other thing we were looking at doing. You can do a diving trip in where the continental divide
it's
goes
the only
apart.
place. It's the only place in the world where you can dive down and touch two continents at the same time.
Yeah. Did you do that?
No.
Oh.
I don't get in the water if I have to wear a wetsuit. I used to get in the water when I had to wear a wetsuit.
I've seen that giant helmet in your office. You were obviously wearing some sort of wetsuit. Or a dry suit? Is that what it's called?
No, with that you just wear a suit, but it wasn't. You'd wear jeans and a T-shirt. But no, when they're paying me, when I was working as a commercial diver, I would get in the water that's cold. Now, if I have to wear a wetsuit, I'll just sit on the boat. I'm not,
Is it the getting the wetsuit on or off that's the hard part?
No, it's the comfort. I don't get into water, period, if it's cold.
Oh, there you go.
I don't do cold plunges. I don't, if it's uncomfortable, I'm, I don't know. I probably would do a cold plunge, but I do get out of the hot tub every now and then and roll around in the snow. But even that's getting a little out there. So, anyways, so you're going to where else are you taking your kids this summer?
We are going to. Hold on, I just blanked it. We're going to California.
I thought everybody was trying to get out of California.
Well, my wife's from there, so we go back for homage every year.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so going to California, and then I blanked. I think we have a family trip planned somewhere. But
great. Got that one off surprise. I thought he would have something better there. So, anyways,
well, my family trip's pale in comparison to yours. I think we're gonna talk about yours today, right?
Well, I thought
hopefully my kids don't see this podcast because this could set a precedent that I'm not able to meet.
I think you can. It's a question of choosing. I mean, I've been traveling my whole life, and it's just. You can travel on the cheap, or you can travel, in a private jet, which I hope someday. I don't actually, but you can. But
is there a difference between traveling in a private jet and flying your own private plane?
Yeah,
because you seem to make a distinction there.
One, you're sleeping in the back while someone else does the work.
That is nice. I have had that experience on your plane.
Oh, great. We haven't discussed that I'm a pilot on this podcast yet. You can cut that part out.
Nate's a pilot. It's been discussed.
Okay. Anyways, so recently I got to take my kids to Thailand. I take them on a trip somewhere in the world every year when they get out of school. And we did recently just spent a couple of days in Dubai. Went over to Thailand, did some scuba diving. My kids are dive certified.
Without wetsuits?
No wetsuits.
All right.
In fact, they tried to give us wetsuits, and I was looking at them like, the water here is like 84 degrees. Why am I wearing a wetsuit? I mean, the whole point of it is it kind of just grosses you out. You think how many other people have peed in those suits. That's why I don't wear them.
Now I'm not wearing wetsuits anymore.
When it's my own wetsuit, I'll wear it. When someone else is wearing it, I don't. But no, I went over to Thailand, and I've always loved Thailand. We went into Indonesia also, and Indonesia was a great experience. So there was a group of 8 of us that went. There was a dental hygienist that's a friend of mine, and she went, Trish O'Hare. She's in her late 70s, and still traveling. I took my sister. I took 2 of my nephews and a niece, and then me and my 2 kids. And so there was 8 of us. And so we rented these little minivans. And driving in Thailand. It was the first time I'd been driving in Thailand. And first they drive on the wrong side of the road. And so you get in the car and it's on the wrong side. But
was it automatic or stick?
That one was an automatic. In Indonesia, it was a stick shift.
Yeah.
And so you're shifting with your left hand. It took a minute to get used to it. But in Thailand, I wanted to go over to Thailand. Some of the best scuba diving that I've done in my life was in Thailand, but it was 22 years ago. The first time I went over there, I went out to some islands out in the Andaman Sea, I want to say. It's off to the west of Thailand. We went into Phuket, and you get on a boat, and you go out and you do a liveaboard on these boats for a couple of days. And it was the Simian Islands, and it was just beautiful diving. It was spectacular diving. And then they had that big tsunami back in 2003, I want to say.
Yeah.
And I went back after that, and it really had not, it had destroyed that area, the diving.
Everything
it just got hammered. And then I went back, I want to say 10 years after that, and it had actually recovered quite a bit. I went to Thailand last year just to kind of see where all this was, and I went down to Phuket. And I'm not a fan of the city of Phuket. I went scuba diving, and what they did was just bizarre to me, but they had all of these dive companies in Phuket that they all use the same boat. And so you have like 5 different dive shops, and they'll each get, 10 people to go diving, and then they put them all on one boat, and you go out to one dive site. And so you got 50 people diving on this one dive site, and you spend more time knocking other people out of your way, trying to keep some separation than you actually do enjoying the diving and the reefs and the fish and everything. So I didn't want to take my kids there. So we took them up to Koh Samui, which is an island on the eastern side of Thailand. And I'd actually never been to Koh Samui, but I'd talked to some people, and they said it was great. It was much more family-friendly than Phuket was. And we went out there and did some diving. And we went out to Sail Rock, which was great. And then we went to another island. Now I can't remember the name of it, but it's just north of Koh Samui. There's 2 islands to the north of Koh Samui, and that was actually some really good diving. You go down and you were swimming inside these schools of fish. It was just beautiful. We saw a rather, I'm not going to say it was a large jellyfish, but it was a good-sized jellyfish, and you could sit there and watch these little tiny fish swim inside the jellyfish and pick away and eat at some stuff inside the internal workings of the jellyfish, and then they'd swim back out. And we're sitting here videotaping this, and hopefully we can get the video on here. But we're sitting here I've never seen this before. And I pulled the dive master over, and she was sitting there, and she's videotaping this, and she told me afterwards, and all the diving she's done, she's never seen this. But it's a jellyfish. It was probably, I don't know, a foot across and had these tendrils. We're trying to keep the kids, looking at this part and not getting tangled up. But anyways, that was pretty interesting, and my kids had a great time.
Say your kids are pretty young. Have they gone diving a lot?
They got dive certified last year. To be dive certified, you have to be 10 years old. And so they got dive certified last year. Sophia, we went diving down in the Caribbean over Christmas. So, they've been diving.
How deep are you going on these dives?
200, 300 feet. No, wow. I'm kidding.
Okay.
No,
I know nothing about diving, but that feels deep.
We're going down to about, I think the most they want these kids going is down to about 40 feet.
Okay.
So we're going down to about 40. Sophia, on one of the dives, I think we were diving on a wreck and Sophia's 13, and we were diving on a wreck in the Caribbean, and that was probably 30 to 40 feet down, 40, 50 feet down, and I think that's one of the deepest things. But we have a picture of her where she's just diving through this ship on the bottom of the ocean. I think that's pretty cool. I didn't get to do that until I was much older.
So I've seen those pictures in Thailand where it has those big rocks, like straight up cliffs and stuff coming up out of the ocean. Is that kind of the area you were in?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's what Sail Rock is. It's just.
You see any climbers?
No.
I've seen it before where they'll take boats out and they'll climb up and they won't have ropes and they'll just go up and then drop back off into the ocean and start again.
I'd be a little sketchy about hitting something under the water.
Hitting something under the water. I'm sure they have.
Anyway, some of the other things we did is my nephew, he's a big fan of MMA, mixed martial arts stuff. And so we went to a Muay Thai fight.
You called me on your way. And if I remember the conversation right, it was something like, I hope they're taking us to a Muay Thai fight because this looks like a rough part of town. And my thought was, I think that's exactly where the Muay Thai fights happen.
Well, it was. And you know, we went out and had a good time. And it was actually more interesting. It wasn't as violent as I thought it would be. In fact, I was actually pretty surprised. Like, one of the fights, somebody got cut. Fight's over, just done.
Oh, wow.
Like, it didn't even seem like a bad cut. It was like a cut right here, done.
Is that where they like wrap the ropes around their fists?
No, they don't. They don't. You know, I didn't know anything about it because I'm not a huge fan of fighting. I'm not a huge fan of.
Is it like punching and kicking or grappling?
Punching, kicking, grappling. It's like everything. The heavyweights that were here were 138 pounds. And my nephew I was like, hey, do you think you could beat them up? And he goes, well, I think if they got close enough to me, they'd kill me. But, you know, I mean, he's six foot. But he goes, I could probably just grab their head and hold them out there. Anyways, it was a good time. I enjoyed that. That was down in Koh Samui. And then we went up to Chiang Mai. I have a friend that told me I need to go up there and go do some things. I'd never been up in the northern part of Thailand. And we went out and did this elephant thing where you go out and they won't let you ride the elephants, but you went out to this elephant preserve where they take elephants and rehabilitate them and let them, you know, live their lives in peace. And we fed them, and my kids got in the water and, you know, bathed them and scrubbed them, I guess, played with them in the lake. And hopefully we can show you some pictures of that. And then we got in our van and drove for 3 hours up to Chiang Rai. And there were some temples up there, and I love looking at ancient temples. I've been all over the world looking at these ancient sites, historical sites, and I wanted to go up there and see the White Temple up there in Chiang Rai, the Blue Temple, and you know, I'd seen pictures of them, and I thought they were really awesome. And I should have done a little more digging and research before I got there, because when I got there, I was looking at them, and I'm like, "There's rebar inside here." And I started looking at how old they were.
They weren't using rebar 2,000 years ago?
Nah, and I looked at what it was, and they're like 20 years old. I'm like,
tourist trap?
Yeah, pretty much. And then after that, we went down to, on this trip, we went down to Jakarta. There was something down there that
And that's in Indonesia.
That's in Indonesia. And that's something that I actually always wanted to go see. There's a site there called Gedong Padang. I don't even know if I'm saying it right. But supposedly it's an ancient site. They don't know when it was built. They have everything going from 2,000 to 27,000 years ago. And, you know, I don't agree with the 27,000 years. I think that's a little long. But there was an article published. They've pulled it back and said, well, you know, maybe we're wrong, but they took some material from inside the structure and carbon dated it. It was like 27,000 years ago.
Wow.
And they took it back and said, oh, this has been debunked. And I hated that they used the word debunked, because that makes it sound like it's false. And the truth of it is when people build something out of stone, you can't carbon date it. Okay, that's why they haven't carbon dated the pyramids.
Right.
They don't know when
aren't you dating the stone?
Yeah, you can't. You can't date the stone. You know, I mean, the pyramids, nobody knows how old they are. If someone tells you they know they're 4,000 years old, they're lying to you. They just don't know. And that's what this was. It was some organic material that was inside the structure. So where did that organic material come from? I don't know. I mean, you know, but I'm not going to say it wasn't, that it's not 27,000 years old. I mean, it is in a state of serious disrepair, but it was an interesting structure. It's a pyramid that's built using basalt stones, you know, kind of like the ones that are on the Giant's Causeway up in is it Ireland or Scotland? You know, that are, I want to say octagonal, maybe hexagonal, something like that. And so they just built them, and they filled it in with dirt, and they filled it, and it was a natural hill, but then now it's a little bit of a stepped pyramid. And that was pretty interesting, and we'll show some pictures of that.
Is that something they had to excavate, or has it been exposed this whole time?
No, it's been exposed. It's the top of a hill.
Oh, wow.
But it's, you know, it's been overgrown, and they've had to, when you say excavate, I'm thinking moving dirt, but they've had to cut overgrowth and pull some of that back.
Had you been to Indonesia before? Or was that your first time?
I have no. I've been to Indonesia a number of times.
Because it may be obvious, but my fifth great grandmother is from Java, Indonesia. So, yeah.
Well, this was on the island of Java.
Oh, there you go.
Anyway, so I've been to Indonesia a couple of times. One of my favorite, in fact, I would say the number one meal I've ever had in my life was in Indonesia. It was the first time I sat there and ate my dinner, and when they came over and said, what do you want for dessert? I just sat there for a minute. And I'm like,
more dinner.
More dinner.
What was it?
I don't remember. I just remember
like a curry kind of thing.
Oh yeah, I love curries. I was in Bali, and I was staying at the Hard Rock, and I just walked out of the hotel, took a left, went down the beach, took another left, and was walking down the street, and I saw some restaurant, and I'm like, I'm going to go eat here. I went in there and went up to the second floor. It was open. There were no windows. There were no doors. It was just complete open. And I went up to the second floor, and you're just sitting out there looking at the city. I remember the city on one side, not a city, but the town on one side and the beach on the other side. And but the food was just phenomenal.
Wow, that's way more romantic than the best dish I've ever had.
I know it's romantic because I was there by myself. No, yeah. So tell me about your romantic dish.
No, the best dish I've ever had was at the buffet at Caesar's Palace. It was the potatoes au gratin with truffle. And it was like $100 to do the buffet, and I didn't get anything else. I just got that and shrimp. I just kept going back for more of it.
Were you 10?
Times 3.5. 4 times 4.
Oh, man. No, that was actually my favorite meal. My second favorite meal was Indian food in Barcelona.
How was the food in Thailand?
Oh, the food in Thailand was great. I love Thai food.
So Thai food's like one of my favorite. Is the Thai food in America similar to the Thai food in Thailand, or do we Americanize it?
Of course we Americanize it. That's what Americans do best. We take everybody else's food, we Americanize it, and we make it better. And worse for you, of course.
Because, I don't even know if drunken noodles is an actual dish in Thailand, but it's my favorite dish.
Yeah, but in Thailand, the drunken noodles are you get drunk first and then you eat the noodles.
Fair point.
So
probably changes the experience a little.
Yeah. So, anyways, going back to Thailand, these temples were pretty amazing, and they were just brilliantly white. Like it was a beautiful white thing. But I just thought I'd throw that back in there. In fact, you can cut that out because that was dumb. Anyway,
keep that.
What other questions do you have, Brother Slaughter?
You can cut that. So I think it's amazing that you share these adventures in exotic places and far off places with your young kids. Like, are there any tips? Like, how does that work? Like, if I decided to lift the airplane ban from our family and travel with my kids, like what are some of the tips you've got in like traveling, say, down to Thailand with young kids?
Well, first of all, I'm going to tell you, I think absolutely 100% you should lift that ban. And I'll tell you why. Because I think that one of the most character-changing experiences that I had as a child was living in Mexico. Because, up until I was 15, my experience was living in the U.S. I mean, I grew up in Idaho. Getting out of the U.S. culture and actually seeing how other cultures were, learning another language, I think did more to shape my identity than anything else I did as a child. And I think, even going down there, I mean, that is the reason why I take my kids on these trips to different cultures, is because I want them to see that even though we live in the United States, and this is where their heritage is, their identity. I mean, their mom is from Brazil, and they've been to Brazil a couple of times, but I want them to see all of the different cultures there are in the world, and so that they have a better understanding of that. I would like at some point to take them and live somewhere else, but I don't know if that's in the cards simply because, I have a
Dynamics.
job. I have a job.
Well, and I think that, when I say ban, it's part selfishness of just liking to travel with my wife in those places, kind of, not that I call my kids, a burden, but a little bit unencumbered. But then also it's a means thing, right? So traveling with two
So your
versus
kids are a burden.
traveling with two versus six.
Yeah.
It's an exponential cost increase, right? Because you're looking at more hotel rooms, more travel expense, more. But
I don't know if it's it is exponential. I mean, the interesting thing is I have a brother right now who he works for an aircraft company that's having some issues right now with doors falling off.
The solution is just give everyone a parachute.
I know. But he had the opportunity to go work in a foreign country, and they offered him India and Ireland, and I so wanted him to go to India.
Yeah.
India is a fascinating country. It's one of the trips.
How long was the time he was going to work over there?
A year.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it was perfect. And he went to Ireland. And so he's actually taking his kids and they're flying on Ryanair and Budget Air and Jet, Easy Jet. And they're flying on all these cheap things where it's $25 and $50 for an airplane ticket. And they're flying all over Europe and they're seeing all these historical places in Europe. But that's still a very white-centered
right.
Viewpoint and culture. And I really wish that he had gone to India because
I think it's a good point. I mean, my son spent a couple weeks last year in Nepal, and I think it was a real eye-opening experience for him. And they were out there building a clinic, and he got to know the people in a different way. And I think it's kind of opened his eyes and given him more context and a worldview. So yeah, I think it's great.
Did he come home from that and bleach his hair white?
No, the bleaching white happened a little bit after when they were going to state volleyball championship. So,
okay,
yeah, their whole team did it, and then they all put different designs in their hair.
Yeah, I told him he needed to get into his mother's hair dye and dye his hair back.
It'll grow back.
So,
Mine,
anyways,
unfortunately, won't.
Anyways, that was my trip to Thailand. I was going to go in a little bit on the history, but I don't know that we got.
What were some unique history points as you were like studying to go? Because if there's one thing I know about you, you don't just like go somewhere unprepared. Like you become an authority on something before you go do it. So what were some of the things that stood out?
Well, I went to. I mean, I've been there a number of times, and so the learning about it was done 20 years ago, so I don't know if I want to start quoting the story behind it. But it's interesting. Thailand is an interesting place because it's predominantly a Buddhist culture, and so their culture is strikingly different than what ours here is in the United States. Being a Buddhist and a monotheistic religious type of a thing is just incredibly different. And I learned a lot about that the first time I went over there. I would sit down and talk with people there as they were making my suits.
It is fascinating because it's in a part of the world that's been, in recent decades, a lot of turmoil with, Laos and Myanmar and Cambodia and Vietnam and.
Well, I went over to Cambodia last year and went to see Angkor Wat, and I wasn't that enthralled with it. I think the architecture was good, but the execution of building the buildings was not that.
What is that? Angkor Wat? Is that what you said?
Yeah, Angkor Wat. How do you read?
Angkor Wat. I have no idea what that is. What is that?
How do you not know what Angkor Wat is?
I don't think that people are interested in how I don't know what it is. I think they're more interested in what it is. What is it? Do you guys know what it is? Okay. See, my point. We will spend 5 minutes with him looking at me in disbelief.
So Angkor Wat is a site in Cambodia, right outside of Phnom Penh, which is I would have to say it's probably outside of China. I'm trying to think if there is another top tourist destination, but it's a huge tourist destination. And it was built about the same time as the cathedral in Paris, the one that burned down. They're rebuilding it.
Oh yeah. Okay. They just brought it up. I now I see it.
Oh yeah, that's Angkor Wat.
Huh. I recognize it.
Yeah, so I went there last year, and so
Interestingly, as he was typing Cambodia into Google, that was like the first thing that came up. So.
Yeah, and it's a massive temple complex, and it's
How old is that?
I'm trying to. I can't remember. I think I want to say it's 1300s.
Wow.
Right around in there.
No rebar?
No rebar. In fact, if I remember correctly, one of the things that really caught me was that they're using bricks to build it, but I didn't see mortar anywhere.
It was just friction?
It was just bricks stacked on bricks. And so I'm surprised that it has lasted this long. I mean, you go and you look at some of these really ancient megalithic sites, like in Egypt and in Latin America and in Peru and what's the country right to the south of Peru? It's
Chile?
No, north of Argentina.
Uruguay?
No. You guys are all going to look at me dumb because I don't know my geography. Bolivia.
Bolivia. There we
It
go.
was Bolivia.
All right. At least I feel vindicated that Chile is south of Peru. So
Yeah, it is. And Bolivia actually isn't. It's east, now that I'm looking at the map.
Yeah.
But anyways, Bolivia, some of the sites there where they're megalithic and they're not using mortar, but they're using huge. I mean, megalithic actually means big stones. But they're using these big stones, and if they're big enough and they're cut right, the friction will actually hold them in place. In fact, the walls in Cusco are built without mortar, but they smooth the stones down so much that the friction holds them in place. When you're making bricks, that doesn't work because they're not big enough. And Angkor Wat is built using bricks, and so they had the technology of clay-fired bricks that the Romans really perfected, but they weren't using mortar, or they weren't using enough, and so everything is just falling apart. And it's not that old. I mean, it's only a couple hundred years old, but it's falling apart, and then it's because the execution of how they built it, I think, was poorly done. It's a beautiful. You can tell from the architecture and the design that it's beautiful, but it wasn't. I just wasn't that impressed with the actual execution of the construction of it.
fascinating.
Well, history is fascinating. So, do you have any other plans for Christmas? Or,
For summer. I remembered the trip. And I'm going at the end of next week. My son and I are going up to Alaska for a week. So we're gonna do some fishing, and if the weather is clear, we're gonna drive up and check out Denali, and
cool, that works.
So,
well, I hope that everybody who watches this or listens to this has some plans. I think that everybody should get out and travel as much as they can. Get out and see the world. It's a beautiful world, and I think people should get out and see it. Hopefully you can. Hopefully you are. If you ever have any questions, feel free to reach out about traveling. I love traveling. I'll give free advice. In fact, sometimes when people go and buy airplane tickets and then question me as to why they don't get upgraded, you can cut that out. Anyways,
that sounds a bit like a flex.
So this is another episode of Clear the Air, talking about traveling, and we'll come back and talk about some more travel tips in the future.
Awesome. How do you say hello in Thai?
I don't know.
Sawadee.
Yeah, but no. Mario calls me yesterday, and he's like, "Hey Nate, I bought some tickets. I'm going over to Greece for my mom and dad's anniversary. Do you think you can upgrade some tickets?" So I get on the phone and I call Delta. But this is the first travel hack. Don't buy your tickets from Expedia, please.
Yeah, you gotta buy it straight from the airline.
Yeah, if you buy it from Expedia, the chances of you getting an upgrade just went to 0. And I called up the airline. I said, "Hey, can I use miles and upgrade this buddy of mine?" And they said,
Nope.
"Nope."
And the price is generally the same.
Yep. What?
And they said no.
They said, "Nope."
All right.
This episode of Clear the Air was hosted by Nate Jones, co-hosted by Shad Slaughter, produced by David Monk, associate producer Matthew Davis. Video and audio were edited by Caleb Scoresby. Research by Sabre Bills. Music by Augusto Diniz. If you enjoyed this episode of Clear the Air, be sure to follow, like, and subscribe so you don't miss out on the latest episode. Have a favorite episode? Share it with a friend. New episodes of Clear the Air are published weekly on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time.